So after coloring this hair, honestly, I feel like it's really come together. I didn't cut very much else, maybe just a little bit off the bang, but that's it. And colored it. Just a little bit of like purple, goldish, burgundy type of vibe. And I don't know, I feel like this hair is a winner. It's really come together. I will insert some pictures of me in it. What y'all think? Keeper? Okay, let's get right into it. This hair has been a rock star, so I'm glad to share finally how I made it. I'm using an extra large mesh dome cap over top of a mannequin head. Just a key thing is to make sure you line up the nape of the cap with the nape of the actual foam mannequin that you're using to create the structure of your wig. And what I'm doing here is just really stretching the cap out as much as I can. I like to stretch it out because I have a pretty big head, so I try to really just capture the size of my head when I'm stretching it out so that the wig itself is not too tight and I have lots of wiggle room. You don't want too much, but you definitely want enough so you don't give yourself a headache. I actually like to go in and start my process with my closure or my frontal. In this case, we're using a closure because it just gives you the parameters of where you will be stitching so you know, so you're not guessing where your part will be or where it won't be. The closure gives you those parameters. I like to put my closure so that it's sitting just a little bit over the cap and it's not actually sitting on the cap itself, so that the area where all your baby hairs are sitting are actually sitting on your scalp itself and not on top of the cap itself, and therefore it's gonna just look a lot more natural in terms of where the lace sits. So I'm going in with the 26 inches and starting with 26 inches at the nape. You want the longest length, in this case at the nape, just to give you some length to your hair, because of course it's kinky curly, so it's going to be shorter. It's going to look shorter in the end result than what a regular 26 inches would look like. You also want to just check in and make sure that you're laying the track itself, the weft, on your wig with the part that is the inside actually on the inside and have the outside sitting on the outside. And once you've done that, you're gonna actually go in and start to stitch. So I like to stitch around my weft, and then once I've stitched around the weft, I continue to fold it back and forth. I don't cut the weft until I absolutely have to, and that's how you're gonna have hair that does not shed a lot but also allow you to keep your wig for a longer period of time. When you're stitching, you would like your stitches to be about a ½ an inch apart. If they are too close together, then your wig is going to start to gather and become pretty tight, and you won't have a lot of stretch room with your wig, which you want to have so you can be able to braid your hair down underneath. And if they're too far apart, it will not be constructed well and will kind of be just ultimately too loose, and the knots themselves can start to come undone, and then you'll have areas where your weft is not sitting on your wig correctly, and it will kind of just be lumpy and bumpy, and you do not want that. So about a ½ an inch apart for your stitches, and then about a ½ an inch to an inch of space in between each track. So here you can see that I stitched the tracks close to the nape, really close together, about a ½ inch close together, and then the other tracks are about 1 inch to 2 inches apart. And the reason why you want to do that with curly hair is because you want to reduce any matting that you have at the nape. So you want to put it close enough together at the nape just to allow for you to still have that thickness at the ends of your hair, but then you want to start to space it out so that the hair does not mat easily. With curly hair, the space is a good thing, especially at the nape, because it's going to allow it to just fall and sit better. And again, it's not going to tangle as much if you have the tracks further apart. And you just want to be strategic so that in some areas they are closer together, like closer to your hairline, but then when you are covering more surface area in the middle, you want them further apart. As I start to cover the surface area, I'm really going about 1 inch apart and just trying to fill it in. As I get closer to the top part, I'm going to do the tracks parallel rather than going in a circular motion. So as you can see, I'm starting to cut the tracks now just to really get them in place so they can fall as natural as possible in terms of how hair would naturally fall from our scalp. For a really good curly hair DIY wig video, check out Ivy's slip over method. Ivy's slip over method really explains well where you should start thinking about switching up the tracks and how you place the tracks. So now that I've gotten pretty close to the closure, I'm taking it off to prep it. So I showed you what the knots look like before. This is the knots after they have been bleached, and I also use liquid foundation and powder foundation just to help the wig, the closure itself blend in a lot more. So you can see how the lace blends into my skin more after it's been bleached. I'm also using this brown toned wig cap as a part of the base as well, so that when I don't have any intentions of ever gluing this wig down, so I want the closure to look as natural as possible with very, very little work on my part. I reattached the closure just back in its position over top of the wig cap, and then I'm going to start to stitch because I want to create as much natural looking space as possible. And as you can see, I'm going to stitch in the direction that is, instead of going circular around the circumference of the head, I'm going to be stitching back and forth, going parallel, so that again the hair looks more natural in how it falls. And you can see here that I stitched the closure down. I'm going to be stitching the weft onto the closure so that everything connects. And you can see that I did about half stitches for the closure. Half-inch stitches for the closure, just to be clear, they're not half stitches. Once we have everything stitched down, we are going to do a dry cut. I like dry cuts on curly hair because you can see where the hair is gonna fall and how it's gonna fall. Hair looks very different when it's wet. It tends to stretch and just sits different. So you wanna cut it dry so you can have a better sense of what you're actually working with and how much inches you'd actually be losing when you cut it. And of course, I'm just shaping it so that it can be a lot more rounded and fit more of the shape that I'm looking for. I'm taking up all of the little straggly ends from the hair. I'm going in now while the hair is wet. You can see the big difference, right, of wet hair in terms of just how it sits. And I'm going in to cut off the ends because I didn't want straggly ends. I wanted it to really all fall and hit at the same point. The hair was looking pretty disconnected because the 16-inch closure was not blending very well into the 22 inches of wefted hair. So I am going back in and adding 24 inches in order to blend a bit more and just to close any gaps in between the closure itself and the wefted hair. Once I had the band on, I went ahead and cut my lace, and I cut it as close to the baby hairs as possible. I feel like it's coming together nicely. As I said, I'm not going to cut anything. I actually lied. I did cut the bangs just a little bit because they were literally in my eye and I just couldn't. But I'm not cutting any of like what I just added until I see the final product, because what I don't want to do is like get into a game where I add, cut. I just want to like say I already cut some layers into it so it has layers. Now I've added hair so it's fuller and looks more natural. This starts to look more like bangs at this point. Big part of what I did was I filled in, like I brought the hair all the way to, can't even find it, to the front right here, as I told you when I was doing it, I push my lace forward a bit over the cap so that it sits more natural, like a hairline. And so I bring my lace forward, so my cap is starting a little bit further back, but then my band, so this is the band right here that keeps it together. So even though the cap is here, the band still sits here. And then my lace sits a little bit more forward, so it sits more on my actual hairline. That's just a way that I find that I'm able to do a glueless wig that looks more natural. But also I've always kind of done that. Like I've always had my lace just a slightly, like an inch forward. Pretty much just the area that's plucked sits forward, and the area that's not plucked sits on the actual wig cap itself. And what I did was I added hair into the lace, and then I added hair in and on an angle. So I pretty much filled in this area right here, and that's how I've gotten it to look more full. And then I did it right up here and I did it down here. So both of those help to fill in so it doesn't look as like mullety, and it just looks more like grown out bang, like I'm growing out bangs or something. And once it's like wet and styled, I can start to blend it in more. But I feel less annoyed by it now, to be honest with you. And I feel like I can picture myself actually like making it work and styling it. So I'm leaving these baby hairs that came with it because I think that they're just gonna be nice for blending. I wish they came curlier, but I'm okay with the fact that they're a little straighter. I just cut them shorter and then cut the lace off. This is what it looks like pre-color, pre-style. This is just, the wig is done. The wig is done. So I'm gonna go ahead now and add some color to it. I'm gonna bleach it first, just lighten it up a bit, and then I'm gonna add the color to it that I wanna add, and I will show you that. This might be a really long video, multiple videos, we'll see what we can do. Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and add color to it. I love it black actually, so I'm feeling some sadness about adding color, but I also feel like I know myself, and I know that although I love it black, it will be more of a look, so to speak, like stand out and have more movement with some color. So once I color it and style it, and it has every, like it's like styled and dried and everything, then I will start to trim again in some areas. Like for this, I might just trim the weight off or something. I don't know. I'm not sure. So I'm just doing a balayage technique here to lighten it up a bit. So I'm literally just going in with bleach and lightening it up just a bit, just so it looks a lot more, you know, natural and flowy. And then I'm going in with a royal purple color. Ultimately, it looks more burgundy in the finished product, but it is a purple color. That's what it looks like when it's done and complete. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it always. Please subscribe and share with folks who might want to make their own DIY wig at home.